Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in the Workplace, sponsored by You Define Wellness. I'm Denise O'Malley, the founder and the Healthy Living Maestro, easy for me to say, at You Define Wellness. Um, Conversations in the Workplace, this is our second edition. We have wanted to bring in and showcase the fact that even conversations in the workplace have to do with wellness. Everything boils down to wellness and well-being. But before we launch into the conversation itself, I want to introduce who You Define Wellness is to you. Employee benefit programs are for sickness. And I say that as a reformed insurance agent. And after a couple of decades as an insurance agent doing employee benefit programs, 5 years ago, we sought to create an employee benefit program for healthy living. And You Define Wellness was born on our website at youdefinewellness.com. That's youdefinewellness.com. We have tons of resources available for you. We have free initial consultations. We have articles. We have videos. We have tools to help you in your own healthy living. But if you're responsible for employees, we also have resources for your employees to utilize. So we invite you to go over to the Wellness Center on our website and check out what we're all about. And if you're so inclined that you want to learn more about it for your own business, please reach out to me. There is a contact us on our website, and I would love to have a conversation about how we can help you with what you're doing in your world. That being said, I don't want to take up any more of our speaker's time. Lori Reichel Howe joined our provider network a few months ago after talking for several months. And she came in an interesting niche. Now, most of the providers, and we have hundreds in the You Define Wellness Network, are massage therapists and life coaches and all these different healing modalities. And Lori came in a different niche. She is a specialist on conversations in the workplace. So much so, she has a very long list of companies, big name companies you would recognize that she has helped, but also is an expert for the Society for Human Resource Management and is a go-to expert for them to bring in conversations. So it's absolutely our delight that we created this platform for her using her own business name, Conversations in the Workplace. And that being said, I am going to turn this over to Lori Reichel Howe. And Lori, it is all yours.
Thank you, Denise. And I will get my PowerPoint up and going. And let's make sure, here we go. Let me get it in. Get it in presenter view and tell me, how can you see? Does it look good?
Looks great.
Okay, fabulous. Then let's just dive in to managing policy, not politics in the workplace. You see, in a democratic society, people have differing opinions, different values and beliefs, and freedom of speech, the ability to communicate one's opinions, values, and beliefs, is the backbone of the American democratic system. We will also find out, though, that at the inevitable times when opinions exist, how we communicate needs to be respectful and productive, not destructive. Unfortunately, we have observed and experienced in our nation, in our workplace, even in our homes and family gatherings, respectful communication has morphed into contention and contempt, active listening and exchanging ideas into verbal insults, attacks, and character assassination. And instead of accepting that perspectives will differ, people end up taking sides. We experience division, and then even bully behaviors are demonstrated. With political divisions seeping into the workplace, HR faces an enormous challenge. And bottom line, HR is about building a culture of respect And without a strategic plan, HR alone cannot build a culture of respect. Today, I will describe 3 critical components of building and maintaining a culture of respect. Whether you're an HR, whether you're a manager, these components will be critical. The first one is establishing policies. Now, here's why we need policies. I moved pretty fast on that, but the reason we need policies is identified in this survey by Randstad, and their findings reveal the following. We see that 64% of political discussions became more heated in the past 5 to 10 years. My gosh, what about in the last 6 months? Also, 55% of the people participating in this survey had witnessed heated political discussions or arguments. 38% have been involved in them. Well, what does this mean? Where do people stand in regards to these conversations? 65 people have communicated in the survey that they are comfortable discussing politics with colleagues, that they learn from those, that they expand their thinking, that they gain valuable information. And yet, look at this, 72% said they are stressed or anxious when those conversations turn to arguments. And then 44% of them say those arguments impact their productivity. Wow. Now, here is the date of this survey, October 2018. Imagine, what do you think the survey results would be in 2021? Political division is even more existent, and the impact and the need to address issues that arise is absolutely critical. And when doing this is going to require establishing policies. When we establish policies, it's critical that people are made aware of what the policy says in addition to what it means. Verbiage is not enough. People need to know why the organization created a policy. What's the purpose behind it? Now, by what? What's the behavioral frame? What does the policy say and mean in regards to behaviors? What are the required behaviors and what do they look like? That would be compliance. What does non-compliance? What are behaviors that are not okay? And we've seen with COVID, we had to become clear on what the behaviors meant, such as wearing a mask, such as social distancing, how many feet. In the area of other behaviors surrounding politics, differing opinions, we need to talk about what respectful dialogue looks like and sounds like. What disrespect looks like, what it sounds like. I sat down and created just what I believe respectful behaviors should look like when opinions differ. And this is something that can be done in teams. It is amazing what we learn because people have a different comfortability with conversations when differences arise. And I went through and just listed what I felt like respectful communication sounded like. Also, when it crossed the line into activity, behaviors such as interrupting, over talking, dominating, aggressive actions. What verbal language sounded like, what your body language looks like, even your voice tone and volume. My gosh, how many how many times, and this is repeat, I'm asked this repeatedly, what are respectful behaviors regarding cell phone use, texting at work? That needs to be made clear. Organizations need to talk about that. Also, why are these policies developed? We don't just want people to comply, we want people to step in.
On LinkedIn.
Oh, and you know what? I think we might need a couple people to mute their microphone. I am hearing some background noise. So if you would do that, and I'll move on. People need to know why, and that's because we want more than compliance. We want people to step up and support. COVID, organizations put in policies not to get merely compliance, but because they wanted people's health protected. And we have policies that support respect because organizations want individual differences, perspectives, values, and beliefs to be supported. So knowing the motivation behind a policy is important. And it's very important that policies describe behaviors when the inevitable happens, and it will happen, that there will be differences of opinions that will occur. So with that, in your chat box, I would love to have you participate with me by telling me in the chat box, in your organization, are you experiencing A, B, and C? A, are people clear on policies as well as expected and acceptable behaviors? Or in your organization, would you say that people are somewhat aware of policies along with expected and unacceptable behaviors? And then lastly, would you say in your organization that people are unclear of policies as well as expected and unacceptable behaviors? And I'm going to see if Denise, if you would read off some of the chat box
You bet.
responses. Love to hear what people are saying.
It's a lot of B's. We have a C here and a comment that says policies are never distributed to all. We have
Ooh,
someone who has indicated A, but the majority are in the B field.
okay. Okay. Yep, that is common. And then some people will say, well, people know the policies, but how they interpret behaviors, oh my gosh, there's a world of difference in that. So how can we enforce and support and have accountability conversations without having some real clarity? So, okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for participating. We are going to have inevitable times when opinions are going to differ. And it's going to be on all kinds of topics, including political opinions. We're also going to have different comfort levels for people in discussing differences. Some people will welcome a political conversation. Others will want an exit strategy and want to know that that's okay and will be supported. We need to anticipate and acknowledge that people will have different values as well as different positions on issues. And because of these inevitable differences, disagreement is going to occur. And we need to become aware of that and more comfortable with that and learn how to respond at those times. And while people need to be able to disagree, they do not have permission to disrespect or harass another person. Respectful behavior is always required. You may not agree, but respectful behavior is not optional, it's a requirement, particularly if we are to establish a culture of respect. All organizational leaders, managers, every employee needs to be trained to hold an accountability conversation. That's because workplace culture is determined by the worst behaviors that are tolerated by managers or other employees, organizational leaders. And when behaviors breach policy, it's not enough to have policy. People need to know how to step up and address those behaviors that break established policy. Now, in order to do this, all organizational leaders, managers, employees need to be trained in stepping up and having those conversations. So that's why in my training, I provide people with the instruction and skill development and practice in implementing my safe conversation communication framework. This framework equips people to safely and respectfully open up an accountability conversation and to do it in a way that minimizes defensiveness, to clearly identify behavior concerns and their impact, even the negative impacts this has on a person's success. And when they can reframe debate into dialogue, we get conversation going and we are able to move forward in promoting needed change. Now, people need training sessions where they not only are told that they need to do some implementing, but where they actually have practice holding accountability conversations, practicing having those with a team member, practicing having an accountability conversation with a coworker on a different team. You're going to need to engage with others outside your team, to with someone you supervise, also someone you report to. Reminder, turn off that microphone if you can mute yourself.
I got it.
Thank you. Heck, it is so difficult managing up managing up to the person who promotes you, who writes your performance review, who ensures that you are going to be able to make your mortgage or rent payment. So that can be a challenge. And just a heads up that Denise has me presenting a Managing Up webinar with You Define Wellness on May 11th. So that will be our next one. You've asked for skills on that, and she's put it on the calendar. So along with managing up, people need to be able to have accountability conversations with anyone who you come in contact with at your workplace. That could be a visitor, a client, even the food delivery person. And rest assured, this safe conversation communication framework that I've developed, well, it works whether you are talking to a person face to face, or in today's world, whether you're having to have those conversations screen to screen. Now, let's go back to the chat box. And I want to hear from you. How many of you work in an organization where people are told to address disrespectful behaviors, but not shown how or trained to do it? Tell me, in your organization, Once again, A, B, or C. A, in my organization, people are expected and trained to address respectful behaviors. Or in my organization, people are told to, but they are not trained or shown how to address disrespectful behaviors. There's no communication framework for doing this, nor are there models for it. And lastly, in my organization, people are fearful of losing their jobs. They're afraid if they speak up and address disrespectful behaviors, they've stepped into unsafe and risky, just risk in your job. So tell me, A, B, or C, which one best describes your organization and how people feel at your organization? And then Denise, if I could get you to once again
Good.
read some of the responses, I'd love to know where our attendees, their
Yeah.
organizations fall.
Somewhere, it's across the board right now. We have B, we have A, we have somewhere between B and C, and somewhere between A and B. So
Oh,
there's
okay.
some, it's kind of like a spectrum here that is going on. Somewhere between B and C is another one. So we're seeing towards the bottom end of that.
Okay. Okay. Are we getting many A's?
One solid A and one somewhere between A and B.
Okay. Okay. To be honest, that's probably higher than most.
Yeah,
So that's a good sign. We also know that we're getting a lot of B and C's.
yeah,
And while I'm a professional trainer and I believe training is critical and a foundational component to a successful organization, training alone or a one-time training will not transform an organization. That's because training will be no more effective than its implementation. So implementation is the third component for organizations. Training is not effective unless it's practiced and applied until it becomes a pattern. We have to get beyond this checkoff list. Our brains do not retain knowledge that we do not put into practice, and implementation needs to be ongoing. It needs to involve addressing old behaviors, even behavior patterns, along with the new ones that will emerge. For implementation to occur, you need to, one, evaluate progress, and that's ongoing. And these three steps of implementation are usually why very rarely does change management effectively happen. One, it needs to have evaluation ongoing. There needs to be coaching, and there needs to be ongoing training. Let's look at each one of those. To evaluate progress, that has two components. One, we need to reflect and discuss what's working, celebrate that. Next, we also need to evaluate what's not working. Where are we getting stuck? What do we need more work on? What are we needing to overcome? So, evaluation, those two components. What else is needed for implementation? Coaching, and that's one on one. Support in with coaching helps people overcome the bumps and challenges that are inevitable. And can't tell you how many times I've attempted to address a behavior and concern, and I was not pleased with the outcome. And afterwards, I became trapped in this woulda, coulda, shoulda, if only, or I wish I would have said. Well, I've learned that instead of going into that cycle of regret, instead I consider my earlier conversation my warm up, because it's more likely that I'll get another opportunity to address this concern again, and more than likely with that same person. So, in the realm of disrespectful behavior, there are what I call frequent flyers to demonstrate repeat behaviors. And rest assured, you'll get another chance. And for most people, changing patterns takes repeated conversations. Learning how to make difficult conversations into safe conversation is going to need some repeat practice. Coaching, besides helping you overcome the bumps and challenges, well, it helps you to prepare and practice. Now, I don't agree with the quote, practice makes perfect. That is contingent. While practice is needed, unless we practice effectively, we will not perfect our skills. For example, I know of a brilliant pianist who, after years of performing and instructing students, discovered that her fingering technique was causing injury and extreme pain. This was an adult in her 50s, and she had to stop playing to let the pain reside. And then she had to relearn to position her fingers differently when playing in order to avoid finger strain. So, coaching helps you prepare for the needed conversations and to prevent the language that tends to escalate conflict, our emotions, our knee jerk responses. And it also increases your awareness in what's the right timing in bringing up a concern. How can you also examine where you might be contributing to a problem? How do you take ownership for changing that? Lastly, coaching accelerates growth and implementation. There are areas of our needed growth that we will not be able to grow on our own. Sometimes we just need a buddy, and we need someone who can step outside our situation and view it from a different perspective. So, lastly, coaching supports you in diffusing defensiveness and creating safety. I've got to be honest, breakdowns will occur, defensiveness will erupt, insecurity, well, it sends a 911 call, and our egos ignite anytime we feel threatened. And when you're holding people accountable, defensiveness, it's likely that it will occur. So, experience defensiveness can make someone run away and give up. But when you have a coach, you can work through that hurdle, prepare. You can even go back to conversations. Now, the final criteria for effective implementation is ongoing training. That's because transformation is a journey. It's not a sprint. It's not making instant mashed potatoes. There is a development that happens. And that development, we start with a lack of skills. We move from being unaware of our need to skills for our awareness into skills. And then we need to develop those skills via practice. We're intentionally applying those skills, navigating through those situations, and it needs to be practiced and repeatedly practiced until it becomes a habit. It becomes an instinct, and where the new skills and the new habits override our old patterns to avoid or freeze up, to flee, or to move into fight and defensiveness. Speaking up in different situations requires different kinds of skills. So, disrespectful behaviors. Well, it's hard to talk to a coworker, and it's increasingly complicated when it's with a boss. Learning how sometimes we need specific training. Blame and excuses, the number two killers of a culture of accountability. Those need specific skill sets and trainings. We need ongoing training because research tells us that consistent and meaningful training is spaced over a period of time. See, a dab will not do you. Knowing is not doing. Being informed is not being transformed unless it's put into practice. And statistics show that behavior is changed through reputation over time. When training, when coaching, and when ongoing training and support is available, transformation occurs. And when organization invest in leaders who gain these skills, then they elevate their leadership to the next level. So, in closing, when organizations establish policies and clearly communicate the what and why, what behaviors look like, what behaviors do not look like, when they train all employees to step up, to have and hold accountability conversation, and when implementation is ongoing, involving evaluation, involving coaching so that they're getting support and overcoming bumps and challenges, and when specific training is is created that helps give them skills in specific areas that are particularly targeted areas within the organization, then amazing things happen. And employees become leaders and they effectively communicate at times when opinions differ. They are able to build more positive working culture and relationships. They do this by addressing the behaviors that break down working relationships. These organizations experience a decrease in wasted time, disengagement, attrition, absenteeism, even health cost. And they increase their performance, their productivity, their ability to problem solve, and a positive workplace culture. So, if this content resonates with you, if you'd like to have a one on one conversation with me to explore how your organization can become equipped to hold accountability conversations, then I'd love to give you a 30-minute time slot with me. If you go to my website at www.conversations in the workplace, the home picture will look like this. And you will see under the picture that there is that blue Let's Talk button. If you click on that Let's Talk button, you'll be taken to a schedule, really a calendar where you can schedule a 30-minute consultation with me where we can strategize a plan for transforming the way people communicate at your organization. And if you're not able to take on the entire organization, we'll start by developing your own skills. Get some training, get some coaching. And I want you to know that difficult conversations can be transformed to safe conversations. And that happens one safe conversation at a time. Now, with that, I know Denise always loves to end sessions by giving some Q&A time. So if you would go to that chat box and pose your question, then let's have some Q&A time. What communication challenges are you experiencing? Oops, can't hear you, Denise.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
That
Loud
pesky
and
little
clear.
mute button. So, I got to say, your information is always so good, and it's great content. And yet, one of the things I love the most is the Q&A time, because it's
Mhm.
real. It's right there, and not that the other's not real. We had one question in the chat box. I've already put in the chat box that if they wanted to ask their question live, they certainly can. um, and we'll ask you to unmute yourself, and so we know that you're looking to ask a question. But I do have one question that came up that I want to make sure that we address. We had a request for your slide deck or a handout of some sort. If
Oh,
they contact you,
mhm.
can they get a copy of the slide deck?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Um, and I believe I put my email in. It's Lori, Lorie, at Conversations in the Workplace. And I will put that in again right now.
I'll do that for you. Don't
Oh,
worry about
thank
that.
you.
I'm just going to copy and paste it in, so we have all of that there. So definitely reach out to Lori,
Oh,
and
yes.
uh, and you can get a copy of the slide deck. Do we have any questions for the live before I dive in? Okay. Um, so Lori, this is really important information right now. And before we started the recording, for some of you who were on at the very beginning, you heard me chatting with Lori about a group that I'm involved in. There's um, a test group, a beta test group comprised of 48 of the companies, the largest companies in the United States, and really around the world, because we have a number of people from Abu Dhabi that are in it, that are the vice president of human resources, people managers. These are company names you would all recognize that are being a part of it. So the biggest of the biggest. And one of the things that I've loved about being part of this test group is when we get to have conversations and come to find out that some of the highest, biggest companies in the world, who's you expect to have all the answers, right? It's just that's one of my preconceived ideas that I have out there, is that they should have all the answers. They are struggling with the exact same things that small businesses are. And
Absolutely.
it boils down to
Mhm,
communications,
mhm,
not communicating the priorities right, having too much to do and too few hands to do the work.
mhm.
And when things like that happen, and you're experiencing that, you're going to have um, bad conversations, obviously, that crop up just because, hey, you're fast, you're moving fast, you don't have time, and you don't always think about, how do I do this politically correct? And foot and mouth disease, something comes out that you probably didn't have to have. So what you're sharing here, Lori, are some great strategies to overcome some of that. And am I hitting the nail on the head with that? That's
Absolutely.
exactly what you've been doing?
Well, absolutely. And when breakdowns happen, blame occurs, excuses occur, but underneath, what we need to do is find out what is the root of that problem.
Mhm.
And is there blame, or are there excuses, or are there legitimate concerns that need to be understood? And that, to get to that, we are going to need a conversation. We need to be able to talk about it. It needs to be safe to talk about it. And we need to be able to identify problems without attacking people. But it's hard to do that when we're emotional, when we're pressed for time. And we need a framework to be able to do that.
Mhm. So, we are in an environment where there are a lot of, the title of this was Managing Policies, Not Politics in the Workplace. And we are in a place where we are dealing with politics that did not exist 18
Mhm,
months ago.
mhm,
A little over a year ago, they didn't exist. things like workplace safety where where masks are involved, and testing is involved and things like that. So we have these added pressures where things were not
Mhm,
taken off the
mhm,
pressure things. So I thank you for giving us a lot of these strategies to be able to have those safe conversations, and how to approach those conversations in a way that can be resolved amicably for everyone, so that you prosper and grow from the experience, as opposed to, okay, gosh, I handled that wrong. And then you have to clean up yet another mess from it.
right. How do you make it your warm up? How do you
Yes.
learn from it and then develop? Because mistakes are not fatal. They're
Yeah.
not final unless give up and quit. And I think you've hit a reality in that, yes, we do have new problems. COVID wasn't something, but how you address a missed deadline and how you address somebody not wearing a mask, the framework works. And so once you get the framework, you learn to finesse it, and it's it just gives you a framework for be able to do that, to develop the language, and then when you practice it becomes instinctive.
That's fantastic. So, for all of you who are with us live, I thank you for being with us. I hope you can see, wow, we've got a huge resource in Lori sharing her expertise with us. And here it is, free education. We've already had one person post how this is absolutely working hand in hand with some of the education that she's doing with DEI. So, thank you very much for that post on LinkedIn. We appreciate
Oh,
that. Yeah,
if I can,
go ahead.
and thank you, and this DI person, you are going to recognize it. You don't change culture by bringing in an expert with a checkoff list. It's going to be a transformation process. And um, so thank you. Understand that I understand that, but I know organizations don't always do that. There are no band-aids. We need to do surgery.
Extensive surgery right now. So, with that being said, everyone, we invite you to come back on the second Tuesday of every single month at this time, where Lori is sharing her expertise with you. Next month, we're going to have a conversation about managing up. And I think that's so exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. So come back every month. Pre-registration is always best, so you have the link, and you guys have the link for this one. You can pre-register for all upcoming events that way. But Lori, as always, thank you for sharing your brilliance with
My
us.
pleasure.
And we look forward to the next one next month as well. All right, everyone, have a great week.